What makes New Zealand's FMCG industry tick? Who are the incredible minds behind the brands we love? Welcome to the Tribe Talks FMCG Series, where we dive into the minds of the remarkable individuals shaping the industry. I'm Cameron King and I lead the sales, marketing and digital team here at Tribe Group. We have a long association and deep understanding of the FMCG sector, and we believe that behind every great leader there's a great story. In this series you'll hear first-hand accounts of the unique paths and valuable lessons learnt along the way. So, let's meet them.
Thanks for joining us today, Simon, for the FMCG Tribe Talk series. Do you want to start off by just introducing yourself and telling us a little bit about what you're currently doing?
Sure. Simon McLennan. I'm the General Manager for Asia Pacific at Manuka Health New Zealand. We're responsible for bringing some pretty amazing gifts between the honeybee and the magnificent Manuka tree, and we export our products all around the world.
Nice. And let's cast your mind back a little bit to how you initially got involved in the FMCG industry, because I know you went to university, studied law, so how does that translate into the FMCG career that you've had today?
I probably fell into the industry by accident a wee bit. So, yeah, studied commercial law and management at Victoria University, and me and my uni pals were probably, thinking that by the time we left university, we'd probably land at PwC or some of the big consultancy firms based in public sector in Wellington. By the time we graduated, global financial crisis hit. Some of those roles were probably the first ones to be cut. So I really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was very proud of my studies. And yeah, like I said, I probably fell into the industry a wee bit by accident through two amazing people, Kimball Thompson and Richard Taggart, who owned New World Metro Willis Street, Wellington. Yep. Very good friends of mine at the time. And Kimball basically said to me, "You'd be amazing if you worked for Red Bull."
And that was the start of it, right?
That was the start of it.
Yeah, and obviously, look, we've got to know each other a little bit over the years, and I've sort of seen your career as you've progressed. And to me, you've been quite purposeful in your progression and the roles that you've taken. So if I look at your history through Red Bull, 8 years, I think your last role there was you were a business manager, and then you moved to Fonterra in a senior key account manager role, which some people might see as a bit of a step backwards, right? But then you've gone from Fonterra into Kamakola into a sales director role, so a broader role, and then obviously into your current role at Manuka Health into a more global organisation. I mean, is this, to me it seems obviously quite purposeful, but is this something that you had, you've planned out to get to where you are? Is it a bit of luck? Have you had a bit of advice on the way? Like, can you talk us through that journey?
Yeah, I think the 8 years that I had at Red Bull were really key in, giving me experience around a brand that I was really quite proud to work for, and I felt a lot of passion working for Red Bull. Mm-hmm. A lot of their value set and the things that Red Bull were interested in and executing around the world from a sports perspective was exactly what I was into. So, I was a huge Formula One fan. Yeah. So when Sebastian Vettel was winning Formula One Grand Prix, it made it really easy to get up in the morning. And then, really good progression. I had some amazing leaders there, A.B. Shukla, Jason Sargent, those two guys really responsible for giving me a lot of growth, and probably my first experience into true amazing leadership as well.
Good training and development as well, I suppose.
Amazing training and development, probably unheralded, to be honest. Like some of the places around the world that I was fortunate enough to travel with Red Bull on training courses and global key account courses, etc., really gave me an amazing experience. Yep. And so, when I left there as New Zealand business manager, I didn't really know where I wanted to go next. And I remember you and I, Cam, actually had a conversation around just trying to be very clear in terms of, not moving businesses just for the sake of moving, but being very, very clear on where I wanted to go or what kind of business I would like to work for. Yeah. And so I remember sitting down one evening and thinking, if you could write 3 or 4 points on a piece of paper in terms of, the most ideal company or business to go to, what would that be? What would those points be? And I remember one being a New Zealand-owned business. I'd worked for this global business, which was amazing, but I wanted to work for a Kiwi company. Yeah. Brands that not only that I could be passionate about, but brands that I've potentially grown up and loved.
Yeah.
And one of the big 5 FMCG businesses in the country. And I think when you pull those 3 together, there's basically one company that falls out of that, and that's Fonterra.
Yeah.
So, in the background, a bit of research around Fonterra, the cooperative, their values, the products, etc. And, that made me be quite clear on, where I'd like to go. Mm-hmm. Obviously, it's never a given.
Yeah.
You've got to find a role and go through the interview process and be successful.
But also a big business and opportunity as well, because you obviously went in there and you had a few different roles in that time as well, right?
That's it. And I think, short shelf life product, dairy, massive portfolios,
mm-hmm.
With the big retailers in New Zealand. The idea of going there and taking my experience from Red Bull made sense, but also the opportunity to become a bit more generalist moving to Fonterra and being, I guess, exposed to a massive business full of incredibly talented people.
Mm-hmm. And then what about, again, you go to Kamakola, quite different again, smaller business, broader role, different challenge?
Different challenge in the sense that, much smaller businesses in more of a, not necessarily a startup phase, because that business was 10 years old, but still very entrepreneurial. Mm-hmm. You don't have the systems and resources and, size of teams around you at that business that you would at, say, a Fonterra. Mm-hmm. And what interested me in that was, they had some nice growth kind of ambitions. They're very strong in food service in New Zealand, and they wanted to grow, particularly across Australia and some of the export markets as well. And so I kind of thought, you know what, with everything that I've learned at Red Bull and the amazing time I had at Fonterra, now's an interesting time to test whether I can do this.
Yeah.
Because you're at the coalface in those smaller businesses.
Leadership team as well?
Yeah. I mean, I was very fortunate enough to be surrounded by some amazing people at Fonterra on the marketing leadership team within brands. Yeah. Those people taught me so much, which was incredible. But reporting to board and working really closely with the co-founders at Karma gave me almost like that, daily or nearly hourly exposure to the key decision makers within that business.
Yeah, and then obviously the transition into Manuka Health now and the opportunities that you've got in the, again, a truly global, we were just talking about it before as well, and how your remit has expanded further and, the cultures that you work with. Can you talk us through that as well?
Yeah, one of the major parts that interested me about Manuka Health was getting back to semi-agricultural sector and products and brands within New Zealand. So, at my time at Fonterra, I love the fact that when I leave home in the morning, I'd probably drive past about 5 Fonterra farmers on the way to work. So, kind of gave you nice, passion and reason for being when you're heading into town.
Yeah.
And coming back to Manuka Health, instead of cows, we've got bees, and instead of dairy, we've got honey, royal jelly, and propolis. So there's some really nice synergies there. It's a decent sized business. We export multi-millions of dollars worth of product around the world.
Yeah.
And so the opportunity to be a part of the leadership team there, work with some incredible people, again, around the table at Manuka Health. But then also for me, picking up regions such as China and Japan and all of Southeast Asia. I've done business in Australia before, I've done business in Singapore before, but this exposure, particularly into Japan and Chinese markets,
cultural differences,
it's huge. I think theoretically, you get it, you kind of understand sales and marketing and general sales. But when you're in a boardroom in Tokyo and you're in the depths of understanding how they do business and how that's very, very different to how we do business or how I've done business in the past, there's a lot to learn.
Yeah, nice. And look, I know you're a smart guy, right? But I'm sure you haven't done all of this by yourself. And again, something that we've talked about in the past together is the role that mentors have had in your career, and I know that's been important to you, and also something that you have then tried to install within your team. So if we just talk about that a little bit, how do you go about getting a mentor, and talk us through your experience, with the mentors that you've had?
I think there's probably a lot of people in the New Zealand industry who I would consider a mentor who probably don't realise that they've mentored me.
Yeah.
So I probably, personally think of them as informal mentors.
Yeah.
And they're the kind of people that, I could pick up the phone and call, whether I'm, curious around how to approach something, or maybe something's happened and I'm not too sure. Maybe they're a technical expert in retail or supply chain or something like that. So these are the kind of people I could have a beer with or go and have a coffee with. Brendan Laurie's a really good example. Like, Brendan's been amazing for me in my career.
Yep.
And yeah, he's the kind of guy who I can go and have a beer with, which is nice.
Yep.
So there's plenty of those people who I think, have helped me probably in my earlier to mid stages of where I'm at now.
Yep.
And then from a much more formal mentor perspective, Chris Quinn from Foodstuffs, an incredible professional mentor.
Yeah.
So the difference between the two is, don't get me wrong, I can still go and have a beer with Chris, no problem.
Yeah.
But my first meeting with Chris from a mentor perspective, I remember sitting in the boardroom at Foodstuffs. He brought out a manila folder, it had my name on it. We spent about first half hour, it was like a speed dating session, asking, what are my career aspirations, the journey from Red Bull to where I was, my leadership style, etc. Like, he was just working me out.
Yeah.
And then proceeded to give me a book by McKinsey on strategic development, which I thought was quite interesting. Told me to read it and do some homework by the time I come back next. So for me, that's really neat, though, is because, the informal mentors are always there.
Yeah.
But when you need that sort of extra level of care from somebody who has built an amazing career themselves and is looking to, help out the next batch of people to come through, Chris Quinn's that guy for me.
Yeah.
And then, another very fortunate and, again, a more formal mechanism that I'm really privileged to have access to at Manuka Health is an incredible lady called Angela Neighbours. She works for iLoom. She's a leadership and development coach.
Yep.
So I think, for me, I kind of realised very early on that when I was resonating closely with amazing leaders, I wanted to learn off those leaders,
Yep.
find out who those leaders are, build up the courage to ask them for a beer or a coffee, or ask them if they do formal mentorship.
And that's probably people's biggest challenge, right? Is who would be a good mentor for me? I mean, do you have any advice for those sort of people? Is it as simple as, identifying people and being brave enough to reach out, or talking to your manager about seeking out, or talking to people within the FMCG sector around maybe who might be a good mentor for you, or what's your advice there?
Yeah, I think I've always approached it two ways. If I've been exposed to a leader that naturally I feel as if, from an authentic perspective, they're quite inspirational,
Yeah.
then in the past I've built up the courage just to approach them directly. Now that can go one or two ways, and you've got to be prepared for that.
Yeah.
The CEOs and MDs of New Zealand,
Busy.
they're so busy,
Yeah.
right? So you've got to be prepared for a no,
Yeah.
and your ego has to be prepared for that. But if you don't ask, then you don't know.
Yeah.
So in that instance, I've been lucky enough that with CQ, for example, it was a yes. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge weight off my shoulders, a huge relief, because, you put yourself on a bit of go out on a limb to ask somebody like that. So, I think as you see these leaders on the news or on LinkedIn or in forums or some of these industry events, if you see somebody that you're like, wow, I'd love to go and have a coffee with them, have a crack, take a punt and reach out.
Yeah.
I'm sure that most of the time they really appreciate it,
Yeah.
and they want to help, time allowing.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if you're not that confident or you just don't know who these people are, then reach out to the people around you, whether they are your leaders or people on your exec team or within your wider network, and just say, hey, look, I'd love to learn from somebody who's a specialist in this area, top of their game, doing really amazing things, coffee catch up, and maybe let's see if they can do some more formal mentorship to support me in my career development.
Yeah, yeah. And your team, have they got mentors? Or?
We're working on it, because I think this is the thing, is with younger team members, or maybe older team members as well, some people want mentorship, but they don't know how to get it.
Yeah.
They don't know how to go about it. And some people just don't want it. Mm-hmm. So for people who are really keen to grow their career and develop, normally I think they're a little bit more open-minded. So whether it's at Manuka Health or at Karma, we've successfully connected team members to some pretty amazing people in the industry.
Yep.
And I'm really proud of that, because the support that's been given to me, if I can help connect people, that's awesome. And it helps breed the next generation or the next batch of amazing future leaders.
Yeah, nice.
But again, like some people just don't want it as well, and that's totally fine. But part of my job is to make sure that the development of the team around me is available should they want it.
Yeah.
And I love connecting should they want it.
Nice. And I've got another question for you. You obviously, your career to date within the FMCG industry, like what is it that you love most about working in the industry?
I think it's so dynamic. Like don't get me wrong, not everybody has the privilege of being able to work with the businesses that you want to work for. We all have to go through stages where a job's a job, for example, and you need to get in and do some hard graft and then see what doors open as a result of that. But there's so many brands available and businesses available for us in the FMCG industry to work for, that I'm sure that if you're quite selective in terms of your ambitions, where you want to be, who you'd like to work for, then you'll find a brand where your values or your passion aligns with. So that, it's a bit of a cliche, but when they say, wake up and go to work and feel good and feel proud about what you're doing, like those companies are out there. They genuinely are out there, whether it's the business or the leader or the executive team. So that's cool. But then I also think as well as like this industry, you don't have to go through your career in FMCG as a salesperson. If you want to, if you just want to be a salesperson from the get-go all the way through your career, totally fine. You can do that. Yeah. Those roles are available. But if you want to do a little bit of sales, a little bit of marketing, a little bit of commercial, go into supply chain and become a real generalist, those options are there for you as well.
Yeah, nice.
And that's what I love about this industry. It's like, it's literally, if you pick your moments and choose your path, you can go as far as you can go.
Yeah. Nice. So Simon, for those sort of mid to senior level management people out there in the FMCG or outside of the FMCG industry, what advice would you give them today?
I think it's really, really important to be clear on where you want to be, who you want to work for, and what gets you excited, what gets you passionate. And so, in my journey, I've always been quite conscious of those 3 or 4 things. It's very easy just to kind of, think about what brands or what businesses are available within the kind of employment network in New Zealand. And if you can find one that you're like, actually, like, I love Fonterra, like I'm all about dairy. I live on a farm, for example, like I could be passionate about that. And then for me, who are the people, at Fonterra? And are there people within your network, or are there people that you can meet and kind of get a feel for, who's there or who's at that business and their leadership styles or how their team's operating, etc. Mentorship can help you with that because we're a small country, so most of us in FMCG know each other.
And you don't need to have all the answers yourself as well, I suppose.
You don't need to have the answers yourself, that's right. Like people can provide that insight for you. So if you go into a business blind, you might be quite unsure whether this is the right move for you or not. But there's enough resource and enough people within the network out there to be able to give you that comfort level that, should I be successful in this move, feels like the right move for me.
Yeah. Let's just touch on that question. You've got a law degree, you walk out of university and land into Red Bull. Let's just talk through that again.
Yeah, I think moving into a new industry, and maybe one that I wasn't thinking about when I was going through my studies, it's interesting when you're trying to get into FMCG industry, but you don't have any FMCG experience. So one of the key challenges that I found back then, and I see still today, is that there are people who might want to come into our industry, but maybe have zero experience in FMCG. And so, I had a really interesting experience at the time. I probably didn't quite understand it, but now it makes a whole lot of sense. One of my favorite leaders, AB Shukla, hired me for a role at Red Bull Energy Drink. And when I got the role, or got the offer, I thought, this is great. I'm going to become a key account manager. I've got the skills. I'm ready. And he said to me, I'm not actually hiring you because you've got the skills, because you don't. And I remember thinking, wow, like starting to second guess everything up until this point, which was interesting. But he was really, really careful in saying to me, the reason why I'm hiring you is because you've got a fantastic attitude. I can't influence your attitude very easily. But what I can influence is your career development and coaching you so that your experience and your skill set is not just where I need you to be, but where you need to be in order to take the next step in your career. So I always found that really interesting. That stuck with me for so many, many years, that, attitude goes a long way. And that would be my guidance to people who are looking to get into FMCG, who perhaps don't have FMCG experience, is never underestimate how much your attitude and your passion will influence a direction for your career, particularly in an interview process. Because with the hires that I've made at, whether it's at Karma or at Manuka Health, for me, attitude is everything. As long as you've got a good level of skill set, doesn't actually have to be in the industry, we can coach and develop that.
Yeah, nice. Thanks for your time this afternoon, Simon. It was great to learn a little bit more about your FMCG career to date. Your entry into FMCG, which is probably not the direction you thought you were going to head in. The career that you've sort of gone through and the different environments that you've worked in, and particularly I like the mentorship piece that you spoke about, and the difference between an informal mentor and a professional mentor, and how that's helped you on your journey. I think there's a lot of insights there that people can take away and learn from. And look, I obviously look forward to watching your career continue to grow and the opportunities that you have in the future as well. So thanks for your time.
No worries, thanks for having me.